So, how much money do you actually need to retire? It's the ultimate financial question, isn't it? The one that honestly keeps so many of us up at night, staring at the ceiling, trying to do all this mental math about decades into the future. Whether you're dreaming of walking away from your desk at 50 or you just want to make absolutely sure you're secure in your later years, well, everything really hinges on hitting a specific target. But what exactly is that target? I mean, is it 250,000 pounds, 500,000 pounds, a cool million pounds? If you ask 10 different people, you're literally going to get 10 completely different guesses. But we don't want to just guess today. We want a framework. In this explainer, we're going to put one of the most famous retirement rules in the world to the test. We'll break down the math and figure out exactly how you can calculate your own real concrete number. Okay, let's dive into this. We're looking at the 4% rule, a UK guide to financial independence. Now, this rule is a massive American export in the personal finance world. But the big question we really need to answer here is, does it actually work for Brits living, earning, and crucially executing their saving plans in 2026? Here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We'll start with the early retirement dream, then unpack the 4% rule, find your FIRE number, do a quick UK reality check, look at the biggest risks to your money, and finally, wrap up with building a winning strategy. Starting off with Section 1, the early retirement dream. There's this massive, growing desire right now to just escape that traditional timeline of working until you're nearly 70. People want their time back, and they want it while they're still young enough to actually enjoy it. And that desire actually has a name. It's called FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early. Now, the absolute core foundation of this dream isn't winning the lottery, right? It's all about an aggressive, highly intentional saving plan. To achieve FIRE, people commit to a relentless saving plan, sometimes stashing away 50% or even more of their income. This extreme savings phase is quite literally the engine of the entire movement. They take those massive savings, invest them consistently over time, and the goal is to build enough wealth so that your investments generate enough return to cover your living expenses completely. Once you hit that magic point, working becomes an option, not a requirement. Moving to Section 2, unpacking the 4% rule. So the crucial point is, how do you actually know when your saving plan has finally produced enough wealth? Well, enter the 4% rule. This is a super famous planning guideline that basically suggests you can withdraw 4% of your total investment portfolio in your first year of retirement. It was developed by a financial planner named William Bengen way back in the 1990s. He looked at decades of historical U.S. stock market data to figure out how much money retirees could safely pull out of their accounts without, going broke. But it's absolutely crucial to note right up front, this is a planning guideline. It's definitely not an ironclad guarantee. Let's move to and see how this builds step by step. So, say your aggressive saving plan gets you to a portfolio of $500,000. Under the rule, your year one withdrawal is 4% of that pot, giving you 20,000 pounds to live on. But what about year two? You don't just recalculate 4% of your new balance. Instead, you adjust that original 20,000 pounds for inflation. So, if inflation was running at 2%, your year two withdrawal becomes 20,400 pounds. You just keep adjusting for inflation every single year, regardless of what the stock market is doing that particular month. All right, Section 3, finding your FIRE number. Because sure, knowing how the withdrawal works is great, but what you really want to know is your starting number, right? To figure that out, we use the magic multiplier, the 25x rule. Mathematically, 4% is exactly 1/25th of your total pot. So to find out what your saving plan actually needs to aim for, you simply take your expected annual spending in retirement and multiply it by 25. That gives you your target portfolio size. It really is that straightforward. And this brilliantly illustrates how the math scales. If you can live a pretty lean lifestyle on $20,000 a year, you only need to build a portfolio of $500,000. But if your dream involves a $40,000 annual spend, maybe you're doing more travel, eating out, helping family, well, your required portfolio jumps to £1,000,000. Every extra pound you plan to spend in retirement means you have to save and invest 25 pounds extra during your working years. Honestly, this is exactly why the saving plan phase of FIRE focuses so heavily on keeping lifestyle inflation in check. Moving right along to Section 4, the UK reality check. Because while multiplying your spending by 25 is a beautiful piece of math, we don't live in a spreadsheet, and we certainly don't live in 1990s America. Let's clearly contrast the two environments. The original 4% rule was built entirely on historical U.S. market returns and the U.S. tax system. If you're retiring in the UK in 2026, your reality looks a lot different. We've got different inflation rates and different historical market returns. But hey, we also have massive advantages to factor into our saving plans. Things like completely tax-free ISAs and incredibly tax-efficient SIPs. Plus, we have to account for the UK state pension, which, might not kick in until you're 67 or 68. So your early retirement plan really has to bridge that gap between whenever you stop working and when the state pension finally arrives. Next up is Section 5, biggest risks to your money. If we're going to adapt this rule for the modern UK, we have to be completely honest about the hurdles you're going to face. Here are the harsh realities that can honestly derail your plan. First up is a market downturn early in your retirement. If the stock market tanks right after you quit your job, selling your investments while they're down is just incredibly damaging to your long-term wealth. Second is higher than expected inflation, which literally forces you to take out larger and larger chunks of cash just to survive. Third, and this is a wild one, living longer. The original 4% rule was tested for a traditional 30-year retirement. If you retire at 40, you might be living off this money for 40 to 50 years. And finally, your spending is going to fluctuate. You might want to travel way more early on, or you might face some unexpected healthcare costs later down the line. So, with those real risks in mind, especially the reality of a 40 or 50-year retirement horizon, we kind of have to ask the question, can you use less than 4%? The answer is absolutely yes. In fact, many in the modern FIRE movement have completely adjusted their expectations. If you want a much larger safety margin against market crashes, or if you just expect future investment returns to be slightly lower than historical averages, dropping your withdrawal rate to 3.5% or even a super cautious 3% is a really popular move right now. The trade-off, though? A 3% withdrawal rate means your initial savings target has to be massive, requiring an even more ruthless saving plan during your working years. Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, Building a Winning Strategy. How do you actually empower yourself to reach this goal? It really all comes down to executing your FIRE saving plan with extreme discipline. You must invest regularly over the long term. Honestly, automation is your best friend here. Diversify your portfolio so you won't wiped out by one bad sector. Keep your investment fees incredibly low because over decades, high fees will literally eat hundreds of thousands of pounds of your wealth. No joke. Maintain a cash emergency fund so you never have to sell stocks during a market crash. And crucially for us in the UK, max out those tax-efficient ISAs and pensions to shield your growth from the taxman. Now, what's really interesting about this is the massive misconception out there that the 4% rule is an ironclad guarantee and that you must robotically withdraw exactly 4% every year, come rain or shine. The reality? It's a highly flexible planning guideline. The most successful early retirees out there, they adapt. They cut back on luxuries when the market is down, or maybe they pick up a little freelance work just to bridge the gap. It's a living, breathing strategy, for sure, not a rigid law. Which leaves us with the most important question of the whole explainer. We've seen the math, the multipliers, and the strategies. So, what is your FIRE number and how will your future spending define your retirement? Remember, this entire journey is highly, highly personal. Take these tools, calculate your own path, and perhaps consult a professional before you go handing in your notice. But the power to build that future, that is entirely in your hands. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.